Sadie Cohen Bounty Hunter, Part 5. Injustice leaves scars, but so does loyalty. When Sabotage halts the Sweetwater Express at Thornbottom Ravine, Sadie, Clem, and Tilly step in to help clear the tracks, and in the process, Tilly's past comes spilling out. What begins as a routine prison delivery turns into a testimony about home, belonging, and the fight to protect what matters when the law is bent against you. Part 5 of Sadie Cohen Bounty Hunter reminds us that courage isn't always about facing danger. Sometimes it's about telling the truth, no matter the cost. Previously, in Part 4, Last Dance with Tilly Kane, when a new bounty poster identified Tilly Kane, wanted for robbery, fraud, and pistol whipping a judge, Sadie Cohen knew she had to take the job. Tilly wasn't just another outlaw, she was an old flame with a long, tangled history. Sadie and Clem tracked her to Badass, where Tilly agreed to go peacefully after one last night of dancing, drinking, and closure. By morning, Sadie saddled up with Tilly in custody, carrying more than just a prisoner. She carried the weight of the past. Sabotage at Thornbottom Ravine by Fink. Content advisory: implied sexual situations, corruption, injustice, and abuse of power, past violence and retaliation, brief mentions of state violence and forced eviction, queer intimacy, consent negotiation, and expressions of desire. We were about a day and a half out from Badass when the trouble started. The three of us, me, Clem, and Tilly, had just crested a low ridge when we saw it. The Sweetwater Express stalled halfway across a narrow bridge spanning Thornbottom Ravine. That bridge was one gusty wind away from collapse on a good day. On a bad day like this one, it looked like a grave waiting to be filled. Tilly sat up straight in her saddle. That's not a scheduled stop. Clem squinted. Looks like something's blocking the track. I rode ahead, signaling for the others to hang back. Up close, it was plain to see. An old freight wagon had been dragged across the tracks and left there. A crude barricade, too deliberate for an accident, not crude enough for bandits. The train conductor was pacing, red-faced and furious. "Sabotage," he spat. "Likely from one of them agitators or anti-rail nuts. We had threats last month, didn't take them serious." He had that railroad man look. Pressed vest, ticking pocket watch, and the kind of mustache that twitched with indignation. "Any passengers?" I asked. "A few, mostly freight, but we're burning daylight and money." I offered to help. With Clem and Tilly's assistance, we rigged up a pulley system using my rope and the train's coal crane to lift the wagon off the tracks. It took 2 hours, several bruises, and a near fall into the ravine. At one point, the pulley snapped and Clem nearly lost his grip. Tilly caught him by the belt and didn't let go until he was cussing and safe again. "Don't say I never saved your hide," she muttered. He shot her a look. Don't say I didn't notice." By the time we cleared the tracks, we were all covered in grit and grease. The conductor, now slightly less apoplectic, offered us free passage up to Fort Crookedjaw, where we were headed anyway to turn Tilly in. We boarded the train looking like outlaws ourselves, grease-streaked, sore, and dusted head to toe in the color of trouble. The conductor waved us aboard with a nod and pointed to the last car where crates of dry goods and a few benches made for a decent ride. Clem sat near the open window, boots up on a crate, the wind tugging at his hair. I sat across from Tilly, who leaned back against a feed sack like she belonged there. Somewhere between the pine hills and the flat gold of prairie, with the clack of the rail steady beneath us, Tilly spoke up. "Shall I tell you why I pistol-whipped Judge Bart Graves?" she asked, voice soft but steady. Clem looked up from his saddle blanket. "Because you were having a bad day and he had a punchable face?" She smirked. "True, but it's more than that." She looked at me then, really looked, and I knew she needed to let the story out before it turned bitter inside her. "I used to rent a room off the Evans' farm, just outside of Ribbon Creek. Sweet little house with a wraparound porch and chickens that follow you like puppies. The Evanses, good folks, the kind that made extra pie crust just for the kids and never asked why you wore trousers on a Tuesday and a dress on Wednesday." She took a sip, eyes distant. "Mrs. Evans told me once that she had a cousin like me, a little boy who figured out by age 12 he was a girl. His parents took him to Chicago, saw a doctor, and came back a week later with a new daughter named Annabelle. Whole family just welcomed her home. No one made a fuss, just passed the potatoes and asked her how she liked school. That was that, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I felt Clem shift beside me, gentler now. He hadn't known this part of her story. The Evanses never once gave me trouble about who I was, called me Tilly from the first, let me dance with their daughter at the barn social, and never batted an eye. She clenched the tin cup harder. So when Judge Greaves handed their whole damn property over to Blackspur Railroad on account of some right-of-way clause hidden in a deed with suspicious fine print that the Evanses couldn't recall seeing before, I couldn't sit quiet. I knew something stank. So I did what any halfway decent reporter does. Reporter? Clem blinked. She grinned, among other things. I wrote for the Ribbon Creek Ledger under the name Samuel Kane. Did some digging, found proof Greaves took a payout, and not a small one. There's ink and silver in every crack of that man's gavel. And that's when you hit him? I asked. Tilly shook her head. No. I marched into his chambers to confront him with the evidence. Thought maybe I'd scare him with a threat of exposure, and it would cause him to reverse the ruling. But he called me a perversion, said I was lucky not to be arrested for masquerade and sedition. Called the Evanses degenerates, said the only thing I'd ever pass for was a bad example. She didn't need to say more. I didn't plan to hit him, she said finally, but I looked at that man's smug face and I thought about Mrs. Evans crying into her apron and Mr. Evans breaking down his porch swing with a crowbar just so it wouldn't be taken by the bank, and my hand just moved. Silver-handled pistol caught him right across the jaw. A long silence followed, the kind that feels like respect. I don't regret it, Tilly said, setting the mug down. Even if I hang for it, I don't regret it. Clem raised his flask in salute. Here's to bad examples, then. Silence rolled between us, broken only by the steady rhythm of the tracks and the occasional creak of the car. I did it for them, she said. For folks like us who don't fit in tidy little boxes, other people's little boxes, who still deserve a home. Clem raised his canteen in salute. To home. I reached out, gently rested my hand on hers. You did what the law wouldn't. She nodded. I just hope someone's keeping their chickens fed. We arrived dusty, sore, and a little sad. Fort Crookajaw wasn't much of a fort anymore. Just a courthouse stitched together from the bones of the old army post. The post office shared space with a barber shop, and the jail shared a courtyard with a chicken coop. Still, the rail stopped here, and the judge had teeth. The local sheriff took one look at Tilly and whistled low. Well, damn, if it ain't the judge whipper herself. She's peaceful, I said, and I want that noted. He nodded. We'll treat her civil. The judge you pistol-whipped is my cousin, said she had good form. We all shared a surprisingly delicious breakfast in the jailhouse kitchen. Eggs, potatoes, strong coffee that could take rust off a horseshoe. Tilly ate like she hadn't seen eggs in a year, then looked at me and winked. Thanks for one last night, she whispered. I needed that. I didn't say anything, but I felt the weight of the moment. Sometimes justice doesn't look like vengeance. Sometimes it looks like kindness with an edge. After Tilly was safely in custody, I finally got to check my mail. One letter. A thin envelope with familiar handwriting. Rivka. Opened it with the tender kind of dread only sisters know. Dear Sadie, Maminka has died. We buried her near Tanta. The house is very quiet now, as it's just me. I keep waiting to hear your boots in the hallway and that terrible whistling you call a tune. The paper ran a story about you last week. Tex Deadly nabs infamous bandit. I clipped it and stuck it in my purse. Don't make fun. If your path leads you back here soon, the spare key's under the flower pot. Your favorite teacup is still in the cabinet. Love, Rivka. I folded the letter and tucked it into my vest pocket over my heart. Clem saw the motion and raised one eyebrow, but didn't ask. For that, I was grateful. I sat with it a moment. Not just the words, but the silence between them. The kind that fills a room when someone's gone. The kind you carry with you for miles. Then I stood up and nodded toward the main street. Come on, Clem, let's see what kind of trouble tomorrow's got planned for us. He grinned. Oh, I've got ideas. Clem and I had just tethered our horses outside a saloon called the Brimstone when I spotted it. A fresh poster nailed to the board between the advertisements for snake oil and dancing lessons. Wanted alive. Jeremiah Fox-Eyed Finch. Reward $350 for fraud, arson, attempted murder, and desertion of contract. Clem whistled. Big money for an old grifter. Big reason, too, I muttered. That desertion of contract part, he ran out on a mining deal up near Temperance Bluff. Swindled half the town. You know him? I nodded slow. He once proposed to me with a stolen ring and a love poem he lifted out of Missouri Ladies' Gazette. Coming soon in Part 6. The Good, the Bad, and the Barely Legal. Tilly's set to hang by the next day. The law is swift when it's as corrupt as a crooked jaw. Sadie's plan is complicated. Clem's plan involves kissing a guard. One jailbreak, one thunderstorm, and one very illegal rescue later. The trio is on the run with stolen documents, a silver-handled pistol, and absolutely no regrets. They'll need dry clothes, a good hiding place, and maybe, just maybe, some honest answers. Because Black Spur isn't done, and neither is Sadie. Thanks for riding along with Sadie Cohen Bounty Hunter. Your support truly makes all the difference in the world to us. If you enjoy this installment, you could tap the heart button, leave a comment, Sadie loves gossip, buy us a coffee if you're feeling generous, and don't miss Sadie's next adventure. Be sure to subscribe to Gloryous Magazine on Substack. You can stay connected with all the magic brewing over at Coffee Buddy Crafters Cafe. And you can find me on Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and TikTok. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.